Ma'am, can you hear?
Hi.
Yes, ma'am, am I audible?
Yes, you're audible. Am I audible, visible?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, please tell me.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, Miss Nappinai, ma'am, you can also turn on your video and camera if that's fine.
Like to see a rebel boy on this screen, huh?
Thank you, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. So, ma'am, I think we can start.
Right.
So, greetings, everyone. Thank you for joining in for the Rebel Girls Interactive session. Rebel Girls is a youth-led platform founded by actually my sister and Nitya and I to help students to interact with women achievers, those who have basically stood against all odds to achieve their passions. So the theme for this session is safety, law, and justice. We have two lawyers with us, Ms. N.S. Nappinai. She's a Supreme Court advocate, founder of the Cyber Saathi Foundation, and a senior and renowned lawyer with about 31 years of experience specializing in constitutional, criminal, IPR, and cyber laws. We also have Ms. Mrunalini Deshmukh, one of the leading family and matrimonial lawyers in India, who has received many honors in the legal field, such as the Award for Legal Excellence at the Maharashtra Achievers Awards 2019. Just some general protocol for the session. Please keep your mics and cameras off during the session. And in case you have any concerns, feel free to write it in chat. So before we begin with the session, we actually have a small poll which we would want the audience to fill. It's just a few questions and would be on your screen now. It's just a short 2-minute poll.
Is everyone able to see it? Can you all click on the options?
Yeah, I think everyone can see it. We'll just wait for 2 minutes for the audience to fill the poll and then we'll begin.
So about 50% of the audience has filled it. Let's give it a minute more. And let's see if more of you all can. There are no right, wrong answers. This is just a fun way to judge what we all know.
Right. I think 70% people have filled it. So should we proceed?
Shall we tell them the correct answers, Karthik?
Yeah, I think we should.
Okay. So does the Indian Constitution protect the rights of women and children? Absolutely, 100%. Everybody got that right. Which of the following countries have not had a woman prime minister or president? It's the United States of America. All the other three countries have, in fact. Who is the Minister of Women and Child for our country? Mrs. Smriti Zubin Irani. What is the helpline number for this thing? 86% of you all got this right. It's 1098. And which is the exam, entrance exam to pursue law in India? It is CLAT. And majority of you all got that as well. So I'm sharing the results now. There we go.
Right. I think now that we're done with the poll, now I would like to invite Ms. Mrunalini Deshmukh to come and offer her perspective towards the issues we will be discussing today.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you for inviting me and making me a part of this afternoon and the interactive session. So tell me, how would you like to go about it?
Ma'am, we don't have any specific structure, ma'am. Basically, we can talk about your personal journey, your journey as a lawyer. Actually,
I'll just be very brief and I'll give you a little bit about it.
yes,
So I belong to a family of jurists and law teachers, uh, because my father was a professor of constitutional law and he was a principal of the government law college who later rose to be the vice chancellor of the Bombay University. So I guess law was at my home and we had law for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So obviously once one opted after the graduation. So I did my schooling and I did my graduation in economics and political science from the St. Xavier's College, Mumbai. That's they call it the BA, the Bachelor of Arts. And after that, what professional course to take? I think it was very natural that I take up law. I did a 3-year law course at the Government Law College, which is in a way, which was a home for me because since my father was a principal, we were residing in the principal accommodation that was there on the top floor. So it was homecoming for me, but this time not as a resident, but as a student of law, first year of law. After I did my graduation, in fact, when I was doing my first year of law, I got married, but I completed my education post my marriage. And after the third year I completed, I applied for the Bombay High Court for the, as they call it, the Sanat. As luck would have it, I worked under the Advocate General of Maharashtra at the relevant point of time, who was then one Mr. Bobde, who was the father, who was the father of the ex-Chief Justice of India, Mr. Sharad Bobde. So I had the privilege and the honor of working under him, working for the government because he was a Advocate General, and got a variety of cases to be done in terms of the civil law, in terms of the service laws, in terms of the other constitutional laws, to be very precise, which was very, very exciting. However, despite having done this, then I had to take a break of around 15 years. That's around 15 and a half years to be precise, because I had 2 kids and I devoted myself completely to the kids. I believed as a mother that it was my duty to take care of them personally. So I stopped practicing and I started completely devoting myself to the home and to the children. But whilst I was doing that, and in a sense that I was sitting at home and not really actively practicing, I started studying for Masters in Law, that is the LLM. And so I remember it's something very funny that I had my little daughter who was on my lap. I used to put her on to sleep and put a book in front of me on some kind of a pillow or some kind of an elevated thing, read it and put her on to sleep. So that's how I've done my master's in law. And after I did my master's in law, then I thought that just studying will not help me. I need to do something, but which is not full time and which is not compromising with the time with my kids. So I thought of doing, and I started taking up lectures for the University of Bombay postgraduate students, which would be once a week for a couple of hours where I could leave my children alone and go do my classes and come back. So this is what I did during the period that I was hibernating or I'd taken a break. Once my kids were grown up, and it's very strange that thereafter I wanted to get back to practice, but which practice, which field of law? Because I was like a novice. 15 years is a long gap, but you're not in touch with the courts, you're not in touch with the procedure. So how do you go about it? But as luck would have it that we started residing at Bandra, and the family court, which deals with the family matters and the matrimonial matters, was just a stone's throw from my residence. Even at that point of time, my kids were still going to school. and the school timings were around 8:30 to 3:34. So I started my practice in a manner that I could fit into between 9:30 and 4 o'clock, and I was back. Initially, after 15 years, you're just like a fresh law student. You have no idea what it is. You don't even know how to sort of move a recipe, how to make an adjournment. You're really, really completely cut off. And I had no senior at that point of time when I started working here. So I learned, I made mistakes, I learned from my mistakes, and I took up smaller matters, tried to do my best, put in extra hard work. Because always I believe that when you know that you have a lot of limitations, especially in terms of period of being away from the subject, also from the point of view of not having so much of access during those days, extra hard work was absolutely essential for me to be equal to some of the established lawyers who were then working and doing family law. But I would like to tell you a very interesting thing about family law. Uh, and I'm talking this about 18, 19 years back. It was not that the family law was what as it is today. Trust me, there were very few lawyers who were there. Not many wanted to practice family law. There were few lawyers who would, in one of their 100 matters, had one or two family matters which they were doing. It was not really looked up upon as a good, attractive, lucrative, educative, and a learning experience as far as family law was concerned. But I said I had to compromise in terms of my time and my other situations, and I started doing that. But today, if I see and if anybody walks into the family courts, whether it's Bombay, whether it's Delhi, whether it's Kolkata, whether it's Bangalore, and these are the courts where I appear, and you see the high courts, you see the media, sort of headlines, you see what's there. Everywhere, everybody's talking about family law in different nuances. What are the rights of the woman, as Supreme Court has laid down? What are the rights of custody, as the high courts have laid down? What are the alimony rights, as the Supreme Court has laid down? What are the parameters? So today, it has not only remained a subject which is a highly legal and technical subject in that sense of the word, but today it has also become a social legal relevant subject, because people in the society are very keen to know about the law. They are very keen to know what is happening around, because it concerns individuals, it concerns tender emotions of a child, it concerns very warring couples coming with very negative emotions. And it also concerns, more importantly, as to what is the essence of law, what is, according to us, according to the enactment, the manner in which the such situations, especially the family situations, have to be dealt with. And once we are doing that, where is the skill lies? And for all those in the audience today, all those aspiring to be lawyers and all those aspiring to take up family law as one of their probably lines of sort of career and profession, my only word of advice to both to all of you here would be that it's law, it's hard work, it's tremendous hard work, and also remember that this field of law requires extreme sensitivity. It requires that you deal with the matters with tender sort of hands, with tender gloves, because you're dealing with the lives and the emotions of the people. Your aim and your purpose for doing this should be first to ensure that there is, if you can bring about the warring parties together, because sometimes there are frivolous, insignificant issues that flare up into a big one. Whether you can bring about a reconciliation, calm them down, treat them, and tell them what the pros and the cons of going into litigation. And if you feel that the situation is absolutely at a very at a stage where it is not, they cannot reconcile or it's irreconcilable, then at least it is as an officer of the court, as a lawyer, it is your duty to ensure that amicable resolution of these disputes should necessarily be your first option. Never fuel litigation, never opt for litigation. Always believe that litigation should be the last resort if only you have exhausted all other sources. So I think this is the kind of things that I have done. I have done a lot of matters which deal with cross-border custody issues. So the parents living in the US, the one of the parents bringing the child to India, the orders of the US court, the orders of the India court, conflicted laws, etc. So I have dealt with a lot of these issues. Have had the opportunity of also dealing with people of socially acclaimed and socially known people who in popular languages are called celebrities, have been able to deal with matters of the of others who are very simple people like you and me. And also remember one thing, that when we study the family law, we have to remember that our laws, our personal laws, are based on our religion, which is the Hindu, the Muslim, the Christian, the Parsis, and so on and so forth. So there is no uniformity of law as far as we are concerned, uniformity of personal laws. We all have to preserve that and get into working within the ambit of the laws which are prevalent. Some uncodified laws have become statutes, and some still remain to be statutes. So all these things are going on. It's a process which is undergoing a lot of changes. But may I tell you one thing? It's a fascinating line of law, and this is only to grow. And I don't see anything better than taking up this kind of law for those who are emotionally, mentally, physically inclined to take up this law and have an interest in doing this and follow all the guidelines which I have said. I think that's enough for the day.
Thank you, ma'am. I really appreciate that part of how you mentioned that even after quitting the legal practices for like a long time, you went back because technically, and I have seen it happen that a lot of women after marriage don't come back to their job, or it becomes really difficult for them to come back. So it must have required a lot of hard work, and I definitely honor your efforts for that. Before we actually move on, we have a poll on cyber laws. So it's just a small another poll about different provisions regarding cybersecurity before we move on to our next guest speaker, Ms. NS Nappinai. So is the poll visible?
Just 1 second, I'm just trying to launch it. I'm having a technical issue with this. Yeah, there you go. Launch. And it's there.
We'll just wait for another 2 minutes for the participants to fill in the polls. So I think more than 70% people have voted on the polls. So now we'll just be displaying the answers.
Okay, so the right age you're eligible at the age of 13 years to be on Facebook or Instagram. It is absolutely illegal to make explicit and hateful comments. You can be charged for that. Attending a meeting under a different name is also offense, but it depends. It's a gray area. Which social media platform recently came under fire? WhatsApp. Of course, I'm sure Mrs. Nappinai is going to tell us a little bit more about privacy and social media. What will you do? Here, there are not really any good right, wrong answers. They're all options that everyone has, and I'm sure we'll hear a little bit more about that.
Right. Now I'd like to call upon Miss N.S. Nappinai.
Thank you, Karthik. In all these years of my practice, and also in terms of the lectures I've given, the trainings I've taken for judges or police or armed forces, etc., or industry sessions, I can tell you that the most difficult of all sessions is to speak about oneself. So I do start this session with the trepidation that it's always tougher, when you want to speak about yourself than about the subject of your expertise. So I'll try and intersperse my journey with some takeaways, which I'm really hopeful that all of you young aspirants will carry with you, irrespective of your career choices. So here goes. Recently in one of the sessions, somebody requested me for, I think I just posted it, shared it on my social media account yesterday. This was a Delhi-based, India Foundation is the name of the organization. The Delhi-based organization, along with Facebook, was reaching out to the top women in technology. And I thought it was very sweet of them to reach out to me saying, ma'am, we want yours to be the first interview. And again, that was a tough one, where the questions were all predominantly on my journey till here. And the last question was very interesting. And I wanted to start today's session with that last question. The interviewer, Gauri, asked me this question of, would the 21-year-old Nappinai have believed that this is where she'll be today? And what was in the mind of the 21-year-old Nappinai in terms of what her future would be like, right? And my response to that was that I loved the 21-year-old Nappinai because she was so brave, she was confident, she was committed. There was so much of integrity in her and conviction. And the last line I've used there, and I can tell you it was a very spontaneous question and response. It was not like they shared any questions with me either, just like Karthik and Nitya didn't. And my response to that last question was that whenever I feel down and out, because I can tell you all, be it a short or a long journey, which is what I've already had with 31 years of practice and also, 3 years of internship, which in my time was unheard of. So all put together, I always say that whenever I felt down and out, be it the 21 or the 25-year-old Nappinai, I have always taken courage from her convictions. And that's what I wanted to start today's session with. And where did the courage for her convictions come? To this youngster, a girl. She was not a rebel girl, okay? Much as people may want to categorize girls who have very clear and defined ideas of what they want to do or where they want to be, I always shy away from these kind of labels, because then you are categorizing somebody as the aberration, whereas what that Nappinai was should be the norm, according to me. So if I were to go back in time to where I started and why I did what I did, it's a kind of combination of Mrunalini's, journey, but a lot of difference in it too. Because, here I am in a generation which traversed these two extremes, right? Of a licensed Raj India to the liberated India. I also am the bridge between the generation with no technology, and here I am speaking to you as a technology lawyer. And we know the kind of exponential growth that we have seen with respect to technology over the last few years. So in that context, I'm going to just share this one quote. I'm assuming that my sharing rights are activated. So I'm going to try and share this one quote from my book, Technology Laws Decoded. So I don't have sharing rights. Sorry, I'll just read it out to you. So I have actually relied
Ma'am,
on
I'm sorry, I've just given you that right. You can go ahead and share it.
Thank you so much. So I've just actually drawn from Thoreau in setting out this quote, and where I've adapted his quote to this effect, saying that technology may be propelling us into a new century with no plan, no control, and no brakes. So just imagine yourself with that, I love adventure sport, by the way, okay? So you have that glider, hang glider, and you're just going to go off the cliff. But just think about all the things that would have been done before you went off the cliff. How many checks would have been done of the hang glider? How many instructions would you have received? How many fallback options in case something were to go wrong would have been put in place, right? So many protective measures. And yet, today, here we are propelling ourselves into the use of technology without any of these safety measures in hand. That is why I just started with this. I'll keep sharing a little bit as and when as I go through this, opening statement. But here was an Nappinai, therefore, who has covered these two extremes. No technology, as I've said in that other interview too, we were very excited when I say we, I mean everybody in my generation, or at least in my office, I can definitely speak for them. We were very excited when we saw our first electronic typewriter. Why? Because in the electronic typewriter, you can type out the entire sentence, check for spelling errors or the contents, and then say print at one go. Instead of typing out as we dictated and then having to waste paper because we may have to do iterations, corrections, etc., in terms of the drafts that we were churning out, right? So from a generation which was fascinated with electronic typewriters, imagine my fascination continuing with respect to emerging technologies in the use of artificial intelligence, blockchain, cryptocurrencies. I'm sure the last one would immediately catch your attention. But look at the kind of world we are living in from something as simple as that, right? So when I have done this journey, here I am again, one more traverse that I've done is, I am a first generation lawyer and I am not too. And what do I mean by that? Up to my grandfather's generation, almost everybody in the family for many generations were lawyers, right? But in my father's generation, they broke that pattern, and I was the one to start and come back to law in my family. And therefore, whilst I had probably a little bit, hopefully, the DNA, that's all I inherited in terms of the legal framework or acumen, etc. I started from scratch. Even the library had been donated by my grandfather before I even finished school. Unfortunately, I lost my grandparents whilst I was still in school. So there was nothing that came through as a legacy. No legacy practice, no legacy systems. The reason I'm sharing this is I want to encourage all of you all to understand that you don't have to fall back on legacy. You don't have to fear legacy. You don't have to believe that you are somehow at a handicap just because you didn't get a legacy practice. It is all in your hands. It's all in terms of how you prepared yourself. And I can only reiterate Mrunalini's words, hard work, hard work, hard work, right? I have worked under two seniors, and I can tell you both of them are brilliant and both of them were super hardworking. One of them continues, of course, to practice now. And these were the learnings I took away from them. It was not just about hard work, it was there ingrained in me. And that's why at the age of 19, I started as an intern, because my understanding, and okay, just to go back a little bit, in 7th grade, I announced that I was going to become a lawyer. And I remember writing this non-detailed essay about it, and my teacher very, casually commenting about whether it was just a very good essay or whether I meant it. And I, in my innocence, actually replied saying, of course, it's, genuine. And in my mind, I remember thinking, why would anybody think otherwise? right? That's what I mean by courage and convictions from that age, which continued to the Nappinai of 19 and thereafter 21, etc. So often I started practice as a criminal lawyer. I did law to practice criminal law. That was the conviction again I had. And often we have been asked this question about how would you feel about, when you're representing, let's say, a murder accused, and you know that the person has committed murder. So I have grown up listening to stories of people committing murder and coming into the office with the blood-soaked sickle and saying, I've done this, will you represent me? As lawyers, we are not there to judge them, but we cannot subvert processes. You present your case the way it comes to you, the manner and mode in which you present, the advocacy skills involved are what make you a lawyer, a good lawyer, and what I love to be, a great lawyer. So it's not about subverting processes, it's about how well you're able to use your skill sets in terms of advocacy in presenting your case. So that's the first takeaway I want to give away. And this was the first takeaway I learned from my seniors. I was still in college when my senior came to college to give a lecture about career counseling, etc. And he gave this very simple example of how criminal lawyers are maligned when they talk about, when, for instance, this was a case where he shared of a senior police officer maligning him on stage when they were both there to give their sessions, and where he said that we do our job, but it's the lawyers who make your life miserable because they let the criminals out into society. And apparently, 2 weeks later, the same policeman called up my senior to say, my son is innocent. He had this accident on the road and, somebody's life is lost, but you have to protect him. So my senior's first comment was, when it comes to himself, his immediate reaction is that his son is innocent. Why should he believe otherwise with respect to other accused? So the first lesson he taught me, and which again I want to share with you all, is what we are really representing, what we are fighting for, is for a fair defense for the accused, not for a falsified or a defense which is going to subvert processes. Don't circumvent processes. So whether your evidence is strong or weak, it's not material. How well you present whatever evidence there is, how well you interpret the facts and present it before the court is what advocacy is all about. And remember not to judge. For that, the judge is there to decide. Our job is as a lawyer. And again, to answer the first question in terms of how do you represent somebody, here is another takeaway from me. When I started practice, one of the ground rules I put down was that I will not take up cases of offenses against women and children. And my senior was not very happy with that. So he questioned me in terms of, why would you say that? Because then you yourself just said that you can't be a judge, right? So am I not then acting like a judge by saying I won't take up cases of offenses against women and children? And there, that 21-year-old Nappinai, or maybe 22 or so, right, answered saying that it's not because I've judged the accused. It's because I won't be able to do justice to the accused if I take up a case like that, because I will not be able to do the best for them. And therefore, the choice is there as lawyers for us. Either we take up a case and do the best we can given the facts and circumstances that are given to us, or we refuse the case. It can't be that you'll take up a case and you will not do justice to it. So that's the next takeaway I want to share. And from then till now, I have followed that same conviction that whenever I'm doing whatever it is that I'm doing, small or big, that commitment to the cause, commitment to the brief, not even to your client, not to anybody else, but to the brief, and acting as officers of the court to present fairly and leave it to the courts to decide. Make sure that you know your facts right. And again, I am completely with my senior when he said everybody should practice criminal law for a couple of years, because our understanding of facts, how to present it, how to get sufficient teeth out of it to be able to strengthen our case. I have not seen that kind of a skill set with somebody who may or may not have this kind of traversing. I traversed from criminal law to corporate law and then civil law. And the next step in terms of a break or otherwise, I have never taken a break from work. I worked straight from 19 years till date. And I can tell you, when I joined my senior's office, he kind of cautioned me saying, aren't you coming in a little too early? You'll burn out by the time you finish law. By the way, Tamil Nadu was the first to introduce the 5-year course. So I was in my 3rd year of the 5-year course when I joined my senior. And he thought I was going to burn out by the 5th year. And I told him, sir, no, I don't think so. And touch wood, I can tell you all, 31 years of practice and I'm going strong. And hopefully I will continue to do so till my last breath, right? So I moved from Chennai, where I practiced for nearly 9.5 years. And I can tell you my trajectory would have been very different if I'd continued there. Not because of legacy, not because of anything else, except for the recognition and the respect I had gained as a practitioner before my parent, High Court at that time. I did not move to Bombay because of marriage. I did not move to Bombay thinking I have to relocate, etc. I moved to Bombay thinking I was setting up a branch. For personal reasons, after a few months of great success, I actually closed down because I was more successful in Chennai than because it didn't work out, So anyway, I closed down the Chennai branch and then focused only on Bombay. Joined a law firm, a very highly reputed law firm for a short while. And I insisted that I will be in their corporate finance wing. Because that was, again, this inquisitiveness in me and my earnestness to learn something new. I had been there, done that in terms of criminal law. I thought I had to do a little bit more, learn a bit more, experiment, and grow my wings and see where I can be. I can tell you, Bombay has given me, paid me very high dividends. I've had a great time in terms of a very robust practice in specializing in private equity and debt structuring in terms of corporate finance, being able to build further, because that was when the IT Act came out. And I had I specialized also in intellectual property rights, along with and again, I've always believed in being there in niche and white spaces in law. So I was literally one of the first to focus on white collar offenses, which is what paved the way for me to move to corporate law, etc., and intellectual property rights. Because of my IPR practice from 94-95, I realized there was something evolving in terms of cyber laws. So I was there ahead of the IT Act itself. And I was focusing in terms of policy work through industry bodies and also training of police and thereafter judiciary from 2003 for police, from 2004-05 for judiciary, etc. Initially at the Maharashtra State Judicial Academy, thereafter at the National Judicial Academy. So parallelly, in all these years, I have been doing this self-honing and self-learning in terms of cyber laws and increasing or continuing to be there in terms of as an expert in terms of cyber laws from the early days, as I just mentioned, sharing that learning through capacity building or training of the stakeholders as I understood it then, which was the judiciary, police, armed forces, industry verticals, etc. And then a bit of a reckoning moment happened for me. And two things happened at the same time, and I will close my statement with these two stories. One was my Chevening Fellowship, and I must tell you all, please start looking out for fellowships or scholarships. Do avail of them, because the most important thing I gained out of my fellowships, the very many which I've attended, is the opening out of my mental expanse, the horizons, the ability to think beyond just the socio-economic, socio-political, socio-legal milieu of India, and to make it a global understanding of how structures and systems work and what is it that we can do to contribute to that, right? So anyway, in 2016, when I was in UK for my Chevening Fellowship, that was when I realized that whilst I've been contributing for the systemic evolution in terms of cyber law, I was actually missing out the most important stakeholder, and that was the user. And therefore, I decided at that time in 2016 on the name and also on the initiative, which was Cyber Saathi. And the reason I chose the name Saathi was, from my criminal practice till date, what I've noticed is whenever somebody is in trouble, the first person to reach out to is their friend. It may just be coincidental that the friend may be a parent, a sibling, or even an authority figure sometimes. But the only reason the victim or the person in need reaches out is because the person they're reaching out to is their friend, a confidant. And therefore, I wanted to create what I call the army of Cyber Saathis. All of you people who are listening to me today, and also those who have taken this initiative, which I launched, called Be a Cyber Saathi, which is to at least create basic awareness in terms of cyber safety and cyber security, so that you will know what to protect yourself against. And lest you fall victim, you must know what are your remedies. I've heard very senior practitioners say on stage, oh, there are no remedies for many cyber crimes. See, there is something called as, XYZ. So I'm not mentioning it because I do not know how age appropriate it would be, but I would call it cyber extortion. And people assume that there are many kinds of, various forms of bullying, various forms of cyber crimes for which there are no remedies, which is completely wrong. Just because you have a colloquial heading, let's take, for instance, ransomware. It does not mean, because ransomware is recent. IPC is very ancient. Even the IT Act is 21 years old now. Just because you may not have a section which does not have the heading ransomware does not mean that you don't have a remedy. Of course, you have a remedy. You just have to know where to look, and where to look is within the sections. So therefore, the whole intent and purpose behind Cyber Saathi Foundation and of setting up the website www.cybersaathi.org was to provide authentic information about cyber threats and vulnerabilities, the remedies that you have in law, and finally, unfortunately, I see this trend both in my practice and because of this matter I'm doing before the Supreme Court from 2017 as amicus brief, amicus curiae before the court, or the friend of the court. See, again, the Cyber Saathi concept, right? So in that, I've contributed in terms of trying to evolve solutions for protecting against uploading of heinous or violent imagery of women and child sexual abuse content online. So as part of that case and the learnings I got from that, what I'm sharing through Cyber Saathi is a series of protective and preventive measures by knowing what the threats and vulnerabilities are, encouraging you and giving you courage that you have remedies in law. And the final element, I see too many youngsters becoming criminals. They commit a crime without even knowing that they are committing a crime, right? So the whole idea of Cyber Saathi is also to do this deterrence or preventive measure so that you know what is a crime and that you will therefore cease and desist from committing the crime. So with that, over to you, Karthik. I hope I did not take up too much time.
No, ma'am. Ma'am, I actually really enjoyed what all you talked about, especially that one part where you said that even if there's a case about like something related to women's rights, you would just refuse the case, not because like you think you won't be able to do justice to the case and you want to give all your dedication to the case. So I think that was something that I was particularly enamored by. And I also like when you talked about that becoming a lawyer does not require like having your parents who are lawyers. You can become a lawyer as long as you have hard work, dedication, and just the will to do it. So I really enjoyed that, ma'am. Ma'am, we actually have some questions from our core team. So ma'am, I would just be reading them out and maybe you can answer them.
Sure.
Yes, ma'am. So ma'am, the first question is from Div. What got you into law, ma'am, when you said that you decided you wanted to become a lawyer in 7th grade? What is it that drove that passion in you to become a lawyer?
Yeah, I don't think there can be any single response to that. Of course, the fact that we have grown up listening to stories about the kind of practice that my grandfather did may have contributed to it. But I also think, it could be that transitional phase. And if you look at my TEDx talk, I can tell you the incident that I've mentioned there is 100% true. I was a very timid, very quiet, and a very reserved kind of person. How much I've talked now, right? Would you really believe that? But believe me, that was how I was. And then, there was this eureka moment when something happened, which was not a good thing. And thanks to the benevolence of my school headmistress, nothing untoward happened to me. And that was when I realized that fear is what makes us commit wrong. Fear is what drives us to do something we would not otherwise do. And today, when I'm taking even sessions in terms of cyber safety, this is one of the things which I emphasize, saying fear is what makes you give away your OTP, give away your, key to your bank accounts, because you think otherwise your bank account will be frozen, otherwise something will happen that is to your detriment. So, and also, people falling for blackmail. When somebody threatens them with imagery or videos or photos that they have, or even chats, the reason you're doing it is out of fear. And I keep telling everybody, don't fall for it because of fear. This was a girl who was in third or fifth standard or something, who suddenly realized that fear is what made me do what I did. So I will not be fearful hereafter. It's as silly or as wonderful as that, whichever way you look at it. Believe me, this is actually happened. And thereafter, suddenly I became this hyper fearless person. And I started standing up for small to big rights, be it at home, be it outside. And I think at some level, I actually liked it. And another funny thing I'll share, I hope you people are not going to laugh at this. I was a voracious reader. I would not stop reading. For me, the punishment would be to tell me to stop reading. So I was that much of a voracious reader. So there was a stage when I actually thought, like every kid, I suppose, that I'm going to be a detective. So I would read all these magazines, all the murder cases that would be reported at it, and try to find out what the real thing could be and all. And then, practicality also, but to be practical at standard 7 was still pretty amazing. But at some level, I think I realized that it was this whole thing about justice. And it is very deeply ingrained in me. I don't know how to put it. We have grown up in a very traditional background. But as part of the traditional background, we also had people who were exponents in terms of harikatha, in terms of discourses, religious discourses. And I'm not a very religious person. But I took away a lot of spiritual aspects, I think, from those discourses. And the one thing I realized was that I become very fearless the minute I stand up for somebody else's rights. I may even take injustice against myself, but I would be all up and fighting when it comes to someone else. So I think it was a little bit of that, that confidence and that courage, which must have said, okay, law seems to be the better fit than becoming a detective. So I'm going to do law. It was one of those moments where after I said it, it just felt so right. And I just started working towards becoming a lawyer from then, including even, correcting my diction, making sure that I spoke English better, more fluently, did not use colloquialisms. So for a school student to do all that may seem strange, but I actually did all that because I had decided I was becoming a lawyer.
That's really inspiring, ma'am, especially like if you want to become a lawyer, you start making changes in your daily life, and just that's something that I think I haven't seen a lot of people do. And that's something that I think only people who are passionate about law can actually implement it in their life. Ma'am, the next question comes from Manishika. She's a 16-year-old student from the same school I go to. What could be the possible measures or ways we could contribute to prevent the younger lot from cyberbullying and contribute to provide a safe platform to them?
See, it's very difficult. Prevention is still the better cure, but it's very, very difficult because the standard response you will get in terms of prevention will be keep away from the platforms. As youngsters, and as a professional and as a practitioner, I can tell you, I'm just covering both ends of the spectrum. You can't keep away from a platform. You need to use it. Because, technology, as with everything else in life, will come with a lot of negatives. But the positives are what makes it workable. Positives are what we are all there for. So we can't look at the negative and say, oh, let's not touch it, right? We still have to use technology. We have to adapt technology into our lives. Without that, we can't progress. So then what is the alternative? The alternative is best practices. To the best possible extent, you will try and ensure that you don't fall victim to cyberbullying. And that can happen how? You will have to, it's a very tiring process, but I can tell you this works to a large extent. Watch what you post first. Watch what the impact of what you're saying is going to be. Imagine the impact that your words have on somebody else. You will be shocked. And, unfortunately, I've been delaying this book of mine on cyber safety, and that is all about this process of protecting yourself. And my entire USP in the book is this. You go around telling youngsters, do this, do that, don't do this, don't do that. Start making lists of do's and don'ts, and think you have now, you have made them ready to keep themselves protected. I'm very sorry, you're sadly mistaken and delusional. The minute you tell a youngster, don't do this, they will want to go and try it. Rebel girls, right? Well, in that sense, I'm a rebel girl too. If you tell me, oh, technology law is not for women, don't do it, I would have just gone and done it. But there's nothing in my life which I've done because I'm a woman or because somebody told me I shouldn't do it because I'm a woman. Everything I've done, I've just done it out of passion. But I'm just saying as a rebel aspect, right? So the whole idea of the book which I'm writing and which should be published shortly is that don't preach. Don't tell somebody what they should or should not do. Tell them what the consequences can be and leave it to them to decide the way forward, right? So you need to know, if you do this, what all can be the consequences. And then you evaluate whether doing this is necessary or not. I'll give a simple example. Now you are disclosing the school you go to, your name, your class, and the name of your classmates, and maybe a photograph of your classmates. What are the implications of that, and what do you gain out of sharing it? Do you still want to do it or not? Right? And then you evaluate. And despite your best effort, sometimes things can go wrong. And I'm just giving you this one simple example. A group of 5-6 friends, and this is a reported thing with one of the studies which is available online. I think it's a CRI study. A group of 5 to 6 school students have their own internal group, and they just do a meme as a joke about one of them. And this is about a boy. The reason I'm taking this example is everybody assumes that a cyber victim is a girl. It's not so. It can be anybody, but women and children predominantly are softer targets, right? So this boy, they just make, and it's not even a bad meme, it's just of him in a Superman costume. And they start joking about it and all. Unfortunately, there's accounts are hacked, and this meme gets shared on public domain. And then in typical form, the comments go from brash to ruthless to sexual innuendo. And at that stage, the group of friends or the victim is asked to just stay away from social media. But that doesn't help because he is still being harassed through his friends. So the friends came together in solidarity, just went off social media for some time to help him. And then it stopped. Usually people will tell you, stop feeding the troll, etc. So the reason I'm using this example is not to tell you all keep away from social media, but just to tell you how even a simple thing can be convoluted into a cyberbullying incident. So keeping away from social media will not be the real solution always. The solution I always say is, you can't avoid being a victim. Chances are all of us have been victims of cybercrime of one kind or the other at some point of time. I can safely say I've been a victim of cyber stalking and financial frauds and possibly hacking and virus attacks. And this despite the fact that I am talking about cyber safety to all of you, right? So you can try your best, But the difference is knowing what to do once you find out that you've become a victim. You will make sure that you take remedial action. You'll clean up your systems, put in your antiviruses. Remember, your mobile is as vulnerable as your computer, so protect your mobiles. Protect what you put in your mobiles. If you would not take certain kinds of pictures when you knew you had to take it to a studio to have it developed, don't take the pictures merely because you can retain it in digital form or print it at home. Because the reason you wouldn't take those pictures when you had to take it to a studio was you did not want it shared with third parties. You did not want the person developing the photographs or the video to see what you're doing, right? So the very fact that this thought crosses your mind means that you're doing something which you're not comfortable with sharing with third parties. Right or not is a moral judgment. Don't go there. Just go into, can this harm you later? Just do that one small pause button, see why you're doing and what are the harms that can come and what can you do to protect against those harms, and then do it. Believe me, 90% of your problems will be solved. And the 10% will be solved when you're very alert. Keep a look on your camera to see whether it's on when you're just working on your college or school assignment. If the green light is on, then you know your system has been hacked and somebody is looking at you. Don't keep your comp on and open in your private spaces. Do not believe that what you're doing inside your bedroom or your private space and sharing just with the screen is going to remain private. It doesn't remain so always. There is a person at the other side of the screen, and that person may not necessarily be the picture that you see in your social media platform. It could be anybody who's just socially grooming you and maybe collecting child sexual abuse content or pedophilia. So be very careful, but don't be paranoid. Just shut the computer when you have finished your work. Don't keep the screen open all the time, because if it has been hacked, then you're allowing the hacker to view what you're doing in your room when you're not on your computer, right? And believe me, these are actual instances that have happened. When you're giving access, when you're downloading apps, verify what is it that you're giving consent for. The simplest way I do it is my device gives me that option to block everything. So if an app doesn't require access to my photographs, microphone, camera, etc., why give that? Don't be lazy. Remember, convenience is the real enemy of privacy, not surveillance. Because you're too lazy to type out a browser, you want that. Because you're too lazy to go and type out your PNR number or your bank account details, you want a click-through link. And then that becomes a habit. And you don't know when you have clicked through into a malware. You don't know when you have clicked through into a financial fraud. So remember, convenience is a good thing that technology brings with it, but just the pause button. Think about what you're clicking on. Do you really need to click on? So for the last 4 days, I've got this wonderful message about cash back into my XYZ bank account. I have no account in that particular bank. Curiosity will be your biggest threat. You want to think, oh, I've got some money. Let me just go and check. And with that one click of that link, you would have downloaded malware and possibly also led yourself into the trap of a financial fraudster. So play safe, don't be paranoid. And remember one thing, if you made a mistake, you made a mistake. It's okay. It's not the end of the world. Don't think that's the end of the world. Don't think that you have to harm yourself in the process. Please don't do that. Remember to take remedies. Remember to take the help of adults in your life or the authority figures. I can safely tell you from my practice that 90% of the cases have been resolved when children are involved as victims through school and college authorities. The authority figures play the most important role, more than even parents over there. So take the benefit of these authority figures. I really hope that all of you, as well as your parents, become cyber Saathis to each other, because unless and until they know what the kind of threats are there, they can't keep protecting you. There is no concept of helicopter parenting in the digital world, because the more they do that, the more, as again the word rebel here, the more you people will rebel. So that's not the way forward. Holding your hand and walking with you is what will help. And therefore, people just have to and keep updating on the different kinds of threats that are happening. Be aware. Don't just assume that what you're seeing. For instance, there was a recent case reported in the Times of India of a child running away from home. And then they found out that he had got all this information from online. And he was found in Goa because he has now been guided on how and in what manner to become financially secure to be able to go and stay at a resort because he is rebelling and running away from home. But he was found with a 22-year-old, a minor child. So the report stops there. We don't know what happened in that case, but I can tell you what happens in many social engineering situations. It doesn't end well. So therefore, don't just assume what you see on social media as the truth. Always pause, check, think before you share. That was a long answer. Sorry, Karthik, but I hope it was of relevance for all.
No, ma'am. I actually definitely agree. Like, I think a lot of our teachers and some of my friends actually duct tape their laptop cameras a lot of times just to prevent like cyber stalking in case your device gets hacked. So that is something that I think everyone should do just to be safe via the internet. Since we're running short on time, we'll try to take one last question. This is actually a question even I had. Ma'am, recently we've seen a growing trend of social media influencers and digital marketing brands, especially on apps like Instagram. A lot of these influencers, especially like those that have public accounts, which everyone can see, are not able to monitor who is checking their account and for what purpose. So, ma'am, the question is, how do we draw a line between having a social media presence in a way that you enjoy versus actually being faced with social evils that you may not want to?
Yes, very, very important question. And I hope to keep my response really short on this so that we stick to time too. But here is my answer in this. You know, when social media started, I remember people were so excited about how many friends do they have. So I have cautioned the children around me, be it in the family or even in our building, etc., to say, don't accept invitations unless you know the person. Merely because a parent or friend has accepted an invitation does not mean that they have done their due diligence. They may have just clicked through. So you please do your due diligence before you accept. And your number of friends does not dictate how popular you are. It is just a number. And it may be a very unsafe number because you don't know who all you've clicked through to allow as your friends, right? And that is also contingent on what you're sharing. So for instance, in my LinkedIn account, I may not really bother in terms of who I'm allowing to click through, but believe me, even over there, I go and check to see what is the kind of details they've given, what are the activities, etc. And if something seems suspicious, like a blank page or a page which uses he instead of she, whereas the photograph will be of a girl, you know, and things which are very surreal. When a photograph, that's called a honey trap, a photograph of a very good looking person, male or female, is used. It may just be to trap you to accept when you know that it's an absolute stranger. So from there, where we are talking about a few hundreds, we are talking about millions today in terms of influencers. So it's all about what exactly do you want. If you want to be a social media influencer, fine. But what is it that you're willing to give away for it? Often, a lot of these followers shown are bots. They're not even people many times because somebody has to give momentum to your presence on social media. So this is how it is achieved. So it's not reality. Thereafter, everything that you have to do, everything that you do indeed, as you go forward, you know, there was this very scary situation and there was this horror. It's almost like each episode is a horror story. Okay, it was on Netflix, Black Mirror, which talks about various kinds of cyber crimes. One of the episodes is about this reality shows and what people are willing to do for popularity on these reality shows. There was also this episode in terms of social credits. And then you had China actually moving to a social credit system. So, you know, sometimes I start wondering whether, you know, from where shows used to be based on reality. Today, the shows are becoming reality thereafter, and social media influencing is like that. So what are you really doing it for? What are you gaining out of it, and how far are you willing to go? And especially if you're a minor, how far is parental guidance being implemented, and how far are the parents willing to let you go becomes an issue. From the flip side of it, let me tell you, I've handled cases in terms of influencers being bullied. So that happens, and happens at a very large scale. Sometimes it is also targeted bullying because of competition. So one influencer wants, when we used to play carom board, there were two ways we could win. One is by pocketing our coins and also the queen and the follow through, or by stopping the opponent from finishing the board. So this kind of bullying that I see is the negative play kind, where, they think that by bullying somebody, they may become popular. Unfortunately, there are also instances where people invite bullying because that then puts them into the limelight. And that goes into the realm of that fiction into fact story, So we don't want a situation like this where we are going to lose track of reality. We have to understand that every reality has a footprint in real life. There have been horrific instances where somebody who is pretty well known online, who has no clue about the stalker in their life. And this is an actual US case I'm telling you about. This influencer was in a car, and then somebody comes and taps on her window, she rolls it down, and she's shot. And the girl doesn't even know why she was shot. And here was this stalker. Then this person is apprehended. And then the police find out that he has been stalking her forever. And in his delusional mind, he actually has a relationship with her. He's talking to her. He's doing all kinds of things. And then suddenly he has also gotten it into his head that he has been duped. And then he has to take revenge. And then he has done what he has done. But it is all in his mind. And the victim literally does not know about his existence. In a case like that, what is the kind of protection you can do, right? But what is it that you want in terms of, if you want to be a social media influencer, what do you want? If you're following social media influencers, how much do you understand is real and what is fake? Where is that filter that you're putting in, right? And if you're feeding that system, is that a system you really want in your life? These are all questions that you have to ask yourself. Enjoy a process as long as it's harmless, but be wary that you don't cross that line between what is permissible and impermissible, what is right and what is not to you. Forget about the rest of the world. And what can be harmful to you or to the rest of the world because you are posturing rather than sharing. So these are all just some takeaways I would put out there.
Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, that was a really elaborate answer. And I think that is something that really, like, it's something that has been trending recently, like about more and more students of like the youth generation becoming influencers. And there's also been an increased case of them facing cyberbullying. So I think that is a relevant issue that we do need to address properly. We would love to take all the questions, but I don't think we're running short on time. So the questions can be sent to us and we'll try to get them answered. So that's it, ma'am, for the session. Thank you so much for everyone for joining. I hope everyone enjoyed the session. I would like to especially thank you, Ms. Nappinai, ma'am, and Mrunalini ma'am had to leave somewhere, so she had to leave a bit early. But it was a really informative session, and I hope it was fruitful for everyone for learning.
Thank you all for having me here, and all the best to your Rebel Girls initiative, Karthik and Nitya.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you for everyone for joining. Please stay in touch with us and we'll let you know if our next event is soon. Please follow us on all of our social media accounts as well. Thank you for everyone who joined.